It means things like parades, things that here in the city can mean not just thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. It's just not time for that now.
What about protests? If people want to march down Fifth Avenue, are they going to be allowed to do so?
Look, Wolf, this is always an area of real sensitivity. This is a historic moment of change. We have to respect that. But
I'd like to talk about Bill de Blasio, essentially America's answer to Hugo Chavez, a complete bloviating buffoon, one who doesn't hesitate to use hypocrisy, contradiction, and sheer nonsense as long as it promotes his ideological agenda. So Bill de Blasio says that it is not a good idea to get out for weddings or funerals, certainly not for Trump rallies or church meetings, but it is okay to get out if you are doing Black Lives Matter protesting. You think that someone who said something like this, so obviously transparent, so hypocritical, would feel some obligation to explain the evident double standard, to say, well, here's why these types of gatherings are okay. Here's why the virus understands that this is a Black Lives Matter protest, so it's going to stay away. Or at least here's why it's worth it for Black people to get coronavirus, because after all, their racial protests are much more important than their health or their lives. You think some sort of argument would be forthcoming, but no, not from de Blasio. He doesn't care. He just basically goes, I'm going to create an exemption right here because it suits me. And this is really what socialist politicians do. They don't bother to explain. They don't have to. Contradictions, lies, double standards are part of their normal métier. The other thing that de Blasio has been doing is painting Black Lives Matter, a massive sign right in front of Trump Tower. And there is de Blasio himself in sort of janitorial splendor, doing the painting himself, along, of course, with his sidekick, Al Sharpton.
Let's show Donald Trump what he does not understand. Let's paint it right in front of his building for him.
This sort of thing raises a very interesting question. What do they mean by Black Lives Matter? Obviously, the life of a black cop, his safety, doesn't matter. His life doesn't matter. A black guy shot by another black guy in a drive-by shooting in an inner city neighborhood. That black victim's life doesn't matter. Black kids shot by armed protesters who are marching behind the banner of Black Lives Matter. That black kid's life doesn't matter. So Black Lives Matter is obviously not about Black Lives Mattering. So what is it about? Well, the leaders of Black Lives Matter are very clear. It's about socialism. It's about creating a Marxist society. They were trained Marxist activists. Now, de Blasio knows this. Why? Because it's something of his own background. He was groomed as a left-wing socialist activist. He would tour places like Cuba and Nicaragua and sing the praises of the regime. So he's a thoroughly bad guy, a wolf, if you will, in sheep's clothing. And his outward buffoonism and stupidity should not camouflage it. This is a very malevolent, dangerous individual, just as Hugo Chavez was. Ultimately, I hope that New Yorkers see it, and ultimately, I hope they kick him out to the curb.